Hello, students, and welcome to our lesson for October 8th. We will start with our Do Now, where we will respond thoughtfully to a prompt. Our objective will be to convert fractions to decimals and percents, and then percents to decimals and fractions. So we'll be going both ways. Our essential question asks, how can I convert a fraction to a decimal? And how can I convert a decimal to a percent? And then how can I go back in the other direction, back so that I can end up with a decimal or a fraction? Our assignment will be to watch our October 8th video and do the pages. There's one page today that goes with the video. And our exit ticket asks, what are the steps I must take when converting a fraction to a decimal? We want you to think very specifically about that. Please, for homework, make sure all your classwork is finished and that you have completed your integers operations quiz from yesterday. Make sure when you do that quiz that you click See Results at the bottom, and that's what submits your quiz. So keep on working hard in math, and I'm really noticing all your hard work. So let's go on to our Do Now. And remember, our Do Now and our exit ticket, we do answer those in teams using the draw feature, and we can type right into the document. For the actual math, you all have now a workbook that you can use, and you can, use your pencil and you can work hard on that. So for math, for our Do Now, think about emotional and intellectual intelligence and imagine that their worth must add up to 10. What portion do you think should be emotional and what portion should be intellectual? In other words, if you see as emotional intelligence and intellectual intelligence, you think they're worth the same, then you would give emotional intelligence a 5 and you would give intellectual intelligence a 5, and that would add up to 10. But maybe you think emotional intelligence is worth more. You might want to give that a 6 and give the intellectual intelligence a 4. So you have different ways to look at intelligence, and we want you to think about that today. Our exit today will be to describe the steps you must take to convert a fraction to a decimal. So we're specifically asking about that one skill. So let's get started. When we convert fractions to decimals and then to percents, we are dividing the numerator by the denominator. So we would take 9 and we would divide it by 16. And we can do that by hand or we can use a calculator. And if we do use a calculator, we would see that we would have an answer if we went out to 4 decimal places of, I love to put that heads up 0, 0, and 5,625 thousandths. Remember, this is the thousandths place. Now, as a percentage, we multiply this number here, this 0.5625, times 100. And when we do that, that really has the same effect as moving a decimal point 2 places. But remember, what we're really doing when we do that is we're multiplying that by 100. And we end up with 56 and 25 100ths of a percent. So this percent sign here, the percent sign means per, let's get a color that we can see very well, means per 100. Okay, that's what the percent sign means. And when we move that decimal point 2 places to the right, that's what we're doing. We're multiplying by 100. Now, if we start out with a percentage like this 84%, we are going to move the decimal 2 places to the left. Well, where is the decimal? Well, let's get rid of this line I just made. Clean that up a little bit. Let's go back. There is, if you remember from our lesson at the beginning of the term on imaginary ones and invisible numbers, there's an invisible decimal point to the right of every whole number. If we move that decimal place 2 times to the left, what we're actually doing is we are dividing by 100. And then our number looks like this. And that is how we write 84/100ths. I always like to put what I call the heads up 0. This alerts the person who is reading this number that this number is less than 1. Now, when we want to write it as a fraction, we know this is hundredths, this is the tenths, this is hundredths, the 8 is tenths, the 4 is hundredths. So we start out with 84/100, 84/100ths, and then we can reduce that. Well, we know that 84 and 100 are both divisible by 4. So if we divide the numerator and the denominator both by 4, we end up with a numerator of 21 and a denominator of 25. And that would be the final reduced fraction. Now, repeaters, decimals with a repeating digit can always be written with a bar, and we'll see that in our further examples, to show the repetition. So the denominator for these types of fractions is always a 9. Now you might want to use a calculator to help you. If you would like some great practice with your division, I think that would be a great opportunity to practice that. So here it would be 20 would be going into 9. Remember, we would put a decimal point here and here, add a 0. So how many 20s go into 90? Well, 4, and 4 times 20 is 80. We subtract, divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. Okay, we need to add another 0, bring that 0 down. 20 goes into 100 5 times. 5 times 20 is 100, and there's no remainder. So the decimal representation of 9/20ths is written 0 and 45/100ths. I know sometimes we say 0.45, but students, what I want you to know is that this 4 is in the tenths place, this 5 is in the 100ths place. So as a percentage, we have that little trick where we just move the decimal point 2 places to, get a color, you can see to the right, but what we're really doing is we're multiplying by 100, and that would give us 45%. So now we're going in the other direction. We have an invisible decimal point here, which we move 2 places. If we have a blank empty space, we need to add a 0. So the decimal representation is 0 and 5/100ths. The fraction would be 5/100, which can be reduced to 1/20. Now, next one, we are given 26/100ths. If we multiply by 100, that would be 26%. And if we write it as a fraction, we start out with 26/100, which we can reduce. Both of those are divisible by 2. We can reduce that to 13/50. So spend a few minutes and try the rest of the page, and then come back and check your answers, and let's see how you do. So pause the video right now and try to do these on your own. If you need a calculator to help you, you can use an online calculator. Okay, students, let's see how you did. So let's see, we have 11 28ths. Now, this is an irrational number. We can really only approximate the decimal value. So we'll use the about sign. And that would be about 392 thousandths. Actually, 93, I'm going to round. 393 thousandths. And as a percentage, it would be, move the decimal point 2 places. That means we multiply by 100. Approximately, again, this is only approximate because it's irrational, 39.3%. 38%, we're going to divide by 100, which would be 38 100ths, written just like that. 38 100ths, let's write that down so we know that these are 100ths. And both of those numbers are divisible by 2, which would give us 19 50ths. 1 and 1/9, if we converted this to 10 ninths and we did our division, we would have an irrational number. We would have a repeating decimal that would just go on and on, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And that's what this little bar represents. So in order to multiply by 100, we need to move the decimal point 2 places. And because this is a repeater, we can keep adding ones. It's kind of a special rule. 111.1%. Special rule for the repeater. Okay, let's go to this next one. 7/10. When we multiply 7/10 by 100, we have 70%. And as a fraction, 7/10 cannot be reduced. So that's a final answer. Now, when we divide 4 by 5, we end up with 8/10. To convert that to a percentage, we multiply by 100, which would give us 80%. In this next conversion, we have 96%. We have that invisible decimal point. We will divide by 100, which will give us 0.96 hundredths. And as a percentage, 96 100ths, which we can divide both of those numbers by 4, and which will give us 24 25ths. So this one's a little bit trickier. We're going to multiply by 100, which would give us 148%. Students sometimes don't always realize that you can have more than 100%. 100% is one whole of anything, but you can have more. It's just your number will be greater than 100%. So if we convert in this direction, because we have more than 1, okay, we have 1 and we have 48 100ths, which we will be able to reduce. 48 and 100 are both divisible by 4, so that would give us 1 and 12 25ths. Okay, we have a repeater. So first we'll move the decimal point to show that we're dividing by 100, which we write in this fashion. we have to put the repeater bar to show that this is a repeater. And this, because it's a repeater, it must have a denominator of 9. So this would be 5/9. We could start out with, should have showed you this, 55/99. But we're going to end up with 5/9. And finally, we have another repeater, 2 3/10, which we will write 2 1/3, because this isn't actually 3/10. This is 2.333. See, 2 3/10 would be different, but this is a repeater because it has this bar. It's not 3/10, it's 0.3333. So first of all, we multiply by 100, and we have 233.3%. I could add another 3 there if I want. That 3 just keeps going on and on and on. That's why it is 2 1/3 as a fraction. So we want to convert a fraction to a decimal. We divide the numerator by the denominator, and that's the answer to our exit ticket. That's it for today. Keep working hard and do a great job.